Bridget Phillipson, the Prime Minister says this morning that a good peace deal in Ukraine can only be won through strength. He must know that this phrase, peace through strength, is a Reagan phrase, and it's been in every Republican Party platform since then, including Donald Trump. Does that imply that, as in the Reagan years, we want to get military spending up to 6% of GDP?
Good morning, Trevor. We're committed to 2.5% of GDP, and we'll set out a pathway towards that. But what the Prime Minister is talking about is how we make sure that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position going into any negotiated peace settlement. Because fighting is still happening every day at the moment, as we speak. The Ukrainian armed forces are in a fight for their country. Now, that is something that we as a government back. We back the Ukrainian people, we back President Zelensky. That's been the long-standing consensus in this country, and the British people have shown enormous support, both in welcoming Ukrainians here, but also in our approach more widely. And we do welcome the approach that President Trump is taking in seeking to get parties to the negotiating table. I
want to get to Mr. Trump in a second, but just let's deal with one practical question. You say you want to get to 2.5%. By when? And when will you tell us by when?
We do want to get to 2.5%. The last time that was achieved was under a Labour government, and we're determined to get there again. We will set out that pathway towards it, but I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you in not setting out that timetable this morning on your show.
Well, you know, I'm sure it doesn't matter disappointing me, though, of course, I'm hurt. But will he disappoint Mr. Trump as well? Will he not tell Mr. Trump when we're going to get to 2.5%?
We will be setting out how we get there. What I can also say is that through the budget, the Chancellor delivered an extra £3 billion worth of investment into defence spending. We know we've got to increase defence spending. We know that we as a nation, alongside our European allies, have got to play a bigger role in defence.
Yeah, look, all right, well, he says, you say 2.5%. He's using this phrase, peace through strength, and as I pointed out, the Reagan years were talking about 6%. Donald Trump has talked about us spending 4 or 5% on defence. 2.5% is hardly peace through strength, is it? It's pretty feeble.
2.5% is a significant commitment. It's not something that's been achieved for some time. As I said, it was last achieved under a Labour government, but alongside that...
Don't you think it ought to be higher if you really mean that you are going to do more than help the Ukrainians not lose? Zelensky's complained that we keep giving them enough to help them not lose, but not enough to win. Don't you need to be more ambitious?
Right from the start, this country has stood behind the Ukrainian people and President Zelensky and put in place significant support because, yes, we want the Ukrainian people to be in the strongest possible position going into that settlement in terms of a lasting peace. But it's also in our national interest that we do this. We saw what happened through the instability that was caused to energy bills because of the Ukrainian invasion. And this is in our interest in terms of our national security and in peace and security and freedom across the continent. And where it comes to investment in defence, yes, we need to invest more. Absolutely we do. And we must play a bigger role too.
More than 2.5%?
As the Defence Secretary set out just this week, alongside additional investment into defence, we have to be serious about making sure that money is spent well. There have been too many examples in recent years where we've seen poor examples of procurement and wasteful spend. But spend it well too.
We can all agree on that, but in the words of one famous American politician, I think it was Walter Mondale, those are the words. Where's the beef? 2.5% is not beef. And so let me just ask you again, should you be thinking about more than 2.5%? The military chiefs here say that you need to get closer to 3 right now.
So 2.5% is our commitment. Let's be clear, that is a big undertaking. The last time that was achieved was over 14 years ago under a Labour government. As the Conservatives acknowledge, they hollowed out the armed forces. They've left us in a very, very tough position. We all know the state of the public finances, but despite that, the Chancellor took the decision at the budget to invest an additional £3 billion into defence, with the biggest pay rise in 20 years for our armed forces. So we haven't, these aren't just words, we are putting money and actions behind what we are delivering. And of course, we want to make sure that our armed forces have got what they take and what it takes to keep our country safe.
You're comparing a invasion of Crimea world with now, never mind the last 3 or 4 years. And now, Either you really mean it when you say we want to achieve peace through strength and you're going to put the money behind this, or else this is all hot air, isn't it?
We do mean it, and it was a Labour government, of course, that created NATO, signed us up to NATO, and our commitment to NATO is unwavering. But where we do agree with the approach that President Trump and the new US administration is taking is that it is right that European nations step up and play our part, and it's why the Prime Minister has been clear that as a part of any negotiated settlement with an American-backed guarantee, we will ensure that we play our full role in ensuring the long-term sustainability of that peace settlement. But in order to get that, we have to have Ukrainian voices at the table, and Ukraine needs to be in the strongest possible position going into that settlement. And every day, brave Ukrainians are fighting and dying on the front line. This is not abstract. This is happening right now as we speak, and it's why we continue to back the Ukrainian people and give them the resources that they need.
All right. Prime Minister is going to meet Mr Trump this week. The Foreign Secretary apparently is going to say that you're doubling down on sanctions on Russia as Mr Trump, just at the same time as Mr Trump gets a bit closer to Mr Putin. Is this a clever move this week to be in a situation where actually you're getting in between Mr Putin and Mr Trump?
So the Foreign Secretary will be setting out more on Monday in terms of the extent of the sanctions. This is a significant package and he will be setting out more detail on this. This is, of course, about Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, but this is also about our domestic security too, because we have seen the impact of Russian aggression here in the UK. We saw the poisonings, of course, in Salisbury. We also see continued aggression by the Russian armed forces around our shores. It is why, again, we are investing in defence. But I do think it's right that we make absolutely clear where responsibility lies for the conflict and the actions that we as the government will take to make sure we bear down as hard as we can on Russia. So again, going into that peace negotiation, Ukraine is in the strongest possible position.
So Mr Trump is wrong in what he says about the way we conduct these negotiations?
I welcome the fact he is able to bring the Russians to the table. I think that is a step forward. But alongside that, of course...
Nobody else is at the table. We're not at the table. Ukraine is not at the table. That's OK.
Well, this is, of course, what the Prime Minister will be discussing with President Trump next week, how we can work with the new US administration to ensure that lasting settlement. We want to play a key role in this, but we, of course, the US are right to take a lead on bringing people to the table, and a Ukrainian voice will be central to any lasting settlement, because without Ukrainians as a part of that, it just won't endure.
Tell me how the Prime Minister is going to persuade Mr Trump to go along with him. He is, by the way, following the presidents of Poland and France, the White House. What gift is he bringing to placate Mr Trump? A state visit, perhaps?
Well, of course, our two nations have a very long-standing special relationship. I know that President Trump values
actually
that.
Fourth in line.
I don't think that really matters. I think what we know is that President Trump really values the relationship with this country. We value the relationship that has endured over many, many generations between our country and the US. And this week, out in the US, the Prime Minister will be setting out how we will back the negotiated settlement that we want to secure, make sure that we play our full part in that. But of course, build on those ties that exist between our nations and what more we can do together. Will
you be looking forward to a state visit by Mr Trump and, speak to both houses of Parliament? Will you be, looking forward to that occasion?
Well, of course, you're inviting me to comment on matters that are, of course, for the King and for the royal family. But I, of course, would always welcome the visit of the US President to this country, because the ties that endure between our two nations are so incredibly important. OK,
it's very, very diplomatic. Well, let me ask you about something that you could have a view about. Prime Minister spoke about Mr Zelensky, said he was a Democrat. So was Mr Trump simply wrong to say that Mr Zelensky is a dictator?
President Zelensky was democratically elected by the Ukrainian people. There have not been elections recently in Ukraine because Ukraine is in the middle of a war. That was the situation that we as a nation faced during the Second World War, where we didn't have elections for a decade. So I think we can understand that.
Well, I'll tell you why I asked this question. The implication of what you've just said is Mr Trump was wrong to say this. It's really striking. Not a single government minister can utter those words.
I think the facts speak for themselves. We know that President Zelensky was elected with a mandate from the Ukrainian people. We respect that.
But you can't say, Mr. Trump...
alongside...
But you can't say that Mr. Trump was wrong. I would have thought that frank speaking between people who have a special relationship is de rigueur. I mean, it's a thing you could do. Why can't you just say, Mr. Trump, you were wrong to say this?
And the Prime Minister has set out the position of the UK government, which is that we recognise that President Zelensky was elected by the Ukrainian people. We think he is doing a tremendous job in the face of the terrible Russian aggression that his nation has faced. And it is, of course, right that in a period of war, elections don't take place.
All right. Well, let me give this one last go from a different perspective. Sir Keir keeps talking about Britain being a bridge between the United States and Europe. Do you think there's a problem with that metaphor? Bridges, generally speaking, get walked over.
No, I think it demonstrates that we want to work in a pragmatic way with the US administration, but recognising that actually European nations, including ours, have to step up and play a bigger leadership role. And I think Keir Starmer, as our Prime Minister, is showing real leadership in the approach that we intend to take as a government, because it's right for peace on the continent, but also because it is right for our national security as well.
All right. Look, if we're going to increase defence spending, the money's going to come from somewhere, and it isn't money that was set aside in the Chancellor's budget because events have changed, right? That means less money for other departments, perhaps including yours, on children and care, universities, whatever it is. Possibly even the breakfast clubs that you're promising. Are you ready for that?
We face some really tough choices as a government, I don't deny that. But through the budget, the Chancellor did prioritise key education spend. And that's why today I am able to set out that we are announcing the first 750 new free breakfast clubs that will roll out right across England, demonstrating our commitment to deliver on the promises that we made to the British people. And this is a promise made and a promise that is being delivered in schools across England, because we know it will make a really big difference to children's life chances. That soft start to the school day, the impact it has on children's attendance, on their behaviour, and the help it provides to parents, putting money right back into their pockets.
Has the Chancellor asked you to model cuts on unprotected areas of your department's budget yet?
Through the spending review process, we're obviously working with the Treasury on a range of different options as to how we can make sure we're getting the best possible value for the money that we have. Look, it's really tough. It is really challenging, and I will make no bones about that. The inheritance that we have was a £22 billion black hole from the Conservatives. It's why it is crucial that we focus on growth, we get our economy growing so that we are able to invest more in our public services. But yes, that means all of us having to make some tough choices about what we prioritise and how we prioritise spend.
So you've been asked and you are modelling those cuts. On the breakfast clubs issue, are you funding this properly? Some heads apparently have withdrawn from the pilot on this scheme because they think they'd actually be losing money if they put on breakfast clubs.
So the money that is going into breakfast clubs is significantly more than the existing scheme that's there, that is much more limited in scope. What we're setting out, and what I'll be setting out in terms of the full detail of the list of schools tomorrow, is 750 new free breakfast clubs, providing amazing support to parents and children. And the money that's going in is a significant investment in our children's life chances.
Just one very quick thing. Youth mobility scheme. Is the government up for the kind of youth mobility scheme, allowing people aged 18 to 30 to come here and work and live for a couple of years, as we do for people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada? Are we thinking about extending that to the EU?
On this and on every other area where it comes to our negotiations around a better deal with the European Union, I'm not going to get into providing a running commentary on particular measures. OK.
Let me just ask you, if I may, at the end here, a personal question, really. Catherine Berbelsing, the head of the Michaela Community School, joined us a couple of weeks ago, and she had some what can be described as choice words about you. I think we can see them now.
No, I'm just describing her. I'm saying she's a Marxist because that's the explanation for wanting to centralise the state.
She says that she's...
What I did was every time she tried to fob me off, first of all, it wasn't private. There were 3 other people with her. There was my deputy with me. And they kept staring at us and being horrible and huffing and puffing and all kinds of things and trying to intimidate us. And they didn't give us any water to drink.
I don't quite know, what to say, being intimidated and so on. But let's just. What's your response? You didn't even offer the woman a glass of water. Even we do that at Sky.
Look, that's just not as it was. But look, I have meetings all of the time with school leaders. I spend a lot of time travelling around the country meeting with school leaders and meeting with school leaders here in the Department for Education when I'm in London. I'm not going to comment on private meetings held in good faith because I want people to be able to express their views openly and candidly. I can tell you what I'm focused on is how we drive up standards in our schools and deliver better. I'm just not going to engage.
All right, let me ask you this: is this a case of recollections may differ?
I think that's fair to say, yeah.
Okay. Bridget Phillipson, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.